The news on BBC One Now with Peter Sissons.
Kevin Keegan resigns as England coach, saying he's not up to the job. An emotional exit after England fail in their last game at Wembley. Kostunica is sworn in as Yugoslavia's president. He says it's like a dream. And Israel gives Arafat an ultimatum: stop the violence or no more peace talks. Good evening. The coach of the England football team, Kevin Keegan, has quit. He announced his shock resignation minutes after England had been beaten by their old rivals Germany in a World Cup qualifier at Wembley, the last game to be held there before the old stadium is knocked down. Keegan said he didn't think he was good enough to be the England coach and that the fans' reaction to the defeat had convinced him it was time to go. Our sports correspondent Kevin Geary was there.
They think it's all over is a phrase that's famously been uttered at Wembley before, but only a handful would have predicted that England's defeat today would mark the end for Kevin Keegan. A stadium so rich in history and tradition had one last dramatic postscript to add to its unique tale. The first inklings of an abrupt, some might say impetuous departure came as England's players left sullenly silent. Then a typically frank confirmation from the man himself.
I just feel I've given it my best shot, and I don't want to go on and outstay my welcome. I think the fans today, when we're coming off, you know, they sort of made me realise that not only did they put me in the job, but with what they were saying when I was coming off, I think they feel it's time for me to go, and that's where the power should be.
With hindsight, of course, the cold, wet day and lowering skies foretold that this would be no fitting finale for the world's most evocative stadium. Keegan's England were awful. Before and after Dietmar Hammann's free kick penetrated a wall as non-existent as Berlin's and found Seaman hopelessly adrift. That it should so swiftly have come to this. Kevin Keegan was appointed less than 2 years ago on a wave of public support and with enthusiastic media backing. There was no one else in the running. But a disastrous Euro 2000 campaign this summer exposed him as tactically naive and unable to find ways of compensating for his players' technical failings. No obvious English replacements spring to mind. The net may well have to be spread unprecedentedly wider.
We've got to take our time, find the right person and wait for them if needs be. And we've got to make sure that we don't put false things on it, like are they English, are they Scottish, are they foreign. It's just get the best person, because what we want is a successful England side, not today or just today, but right through the future in the next 10 years.
At damagingly short notice, Howard Wilkinson, the FA's Director of Football, will take the team to Helsinki next week for what's now become a crucial match against Finland. But nobody sees him as a long-term successor. Inevitably, the name Terry Venables has surfaced. The fans and the bookies' favourites having quit while he was ahead after Euro 96, he may still have too many enemies within the FA to be invited back. It should have been a day to celebrate the end of a glorious era. Instead, a rather undistinguished chapter has closed, and English football once again finds itself on the floor. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
Yugoslavia consigned years of dictatorship and oppression to the history books tonight when Vojislav Kostunica was formally sworn in as president. It was the culmination of the practically bloodless overthrow of Slobodan Milosevic, which began with elections 13 days ago.
Only days ago, few people would have dared to believe this, a peaceful transfer of power in Yugoslavia. Vojislav Kostunica, the leader of the opposition, was sworn in as president. And after 13 often violent years, the Milosevic era was finally over. President Kostunica took power a little bewildered. All of us are still surprised and confused, he said, and to me personally, it still seems like a dream. He spoke of the country rejoining the international community, but pledged to restore Yugoslav sovereignty over Kosovo, but in a dignified way. But Mr. Milosevic still casts his shadow. It seems he's in Belgrade, and certainly the presence of soldiers outside his villa suggests he remains inside. Earlier today, his son Marko left the country for Moscow, taking his family with him. Last night, Mr. Milosevic had appeared on television as a born-again Democrat, congratulating the winner. But it's reported that earlier he'd been escorted by armed soldiers to a meeting with Mr. Kostunica. Sources here tonight told us that at that meeting, Mr. Milosevic asked for and received assurances that he wouldn't be sent to the War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague. When he sought a similar assurance that he wouldn't be put on trial here, it wasn't forthcoming. But tonight, a new leader spoke in a new language for this country, of a return to human rights, of upholding the rule of law, and that includes no acts of vengeance. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News, Belgrade.
Two British policemen, Adrian Prangnell and John Yaw, who spent 2 months in prison in Yugoslavia on suspicion of terrorism, have arrived home. The men were released yesterday by Yugoslavia's new administration. They said they were astonished at how quickly it all happened and that it was wonderful to be free. The Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak has issued a 48-hour ultimatum to Yasser Arafat to stop the violence against Israeli troops or face heavy retaliation and the end of the peace talks. On Israel's northern border, 3 Israeli soldiers were today kidnapped by Hezbollah guerrillas. Israeli warplanes have since attacked Hezbollah targets near Shabar in southern Lebanon. It was the first time they've been in action since Israel withdrew from the area in May. From Jerusalem, our correspondent Paul Adams reports.
A new and dangerous escalation. Israel is sending extra troops to the north amid fears of renewed fighting. Hezbollah gunfire has been directed against Israeli positions close to the border. Hezbollah says it's occupied Lebanese territory. 3 soldiers have been captured. It's a huge embarrassment for Israel. Elsewhere on Israel's northern border, a violent confrontation with Palestinian refugees. They came to the fence from their camps in Lebanon. Israel says they intended to storm an Israeli village nearby. But weekend stone throwing along the border has been commonplace since Israel's withdrawal in May. This is the worst clash of its kind since then. On the West Bank, Palestinians have been celebrating the evacuation of Israeli troops from a religious site claimed by Jews. Joseph's tomb has been the scene of a running battle for a week. It didn't take long for local Palestinians to start tearing it apart. Israel has accused Yasser Arafat's Palestinian Authority of failing to protect it. In his toughest warning yet, the Prime Minister told Yasser Arafat to stop the violence.
If we will not see an end to the violence within the next 2 days, we will read it as a deliberate decision of Chairman Arafat to put an end to the peace process at this stage.
In Tel Aviv, the Prime Minister's right-wing opponents are accusing him of weakness. His leadership is being sorely tested. Just when it seemed this crisis couldn't get any worse, it did. If Israel fails to secure the release of its captured soldiers through diplomatic means, it may resort to force. Closer to home, the next 2 days could determine whether Israel and the Palestinians have anything left to talk about. The threat of renewed violence hangs over the entire region. Paul Adams, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Here, the leader of the Ulster Unionists, David Trimble, has told his critics to stop undermining the party. Speaking at the party's conference in Belfast, Mr Trimble vowed to stay in the province's power-sharing government and criticised those in the party who, he said, had bad-mouthed his assembly team. Racing at Ascot was ruined today by a bomb scare. The meeting was abandoned after only 1 race, and the 8,000 spectators were evacuated when a coded warning was received. A thorough search of the racecourse found nothing. From next month, speeding fines will go up from £40 to £60. The government says the increase will reduce deaths and injuries on Britain's roads, but motoring groups have questioned the strategy, as Tom Simons reports.
We've got 2 sets of skid marks and a slide.
The latest government's TV push for road safety. 1,200 people die every year in speed-related accidents. So next month, the fines will go up. The minimum penalty rises from £40 to £60. And parking fines will be increased too, from £20 to £30 outside London and from £30 to £40 in the capital. It's the first time fines have gone up in 8 years. The Treasury has accepted the case for putting police penalty money directly back into road safety. Some of it will be spent on new speed cameras.
The government already earns something like about £30 to £40 million a year from speed cameras, and this is only going to dramatically increase it without having any material effect on road safety whatsoever.
The rise in parking fines will be as popular as the traffic wardens writing them out. Drivers are still smarting from the petrol crisis. But the government insists parking on yellow lines, and in this case a red route, holds up the traffic and makes it difficult for buses to get through. The fines get the message across. It's all aimed at changing the behaviour of motorists. The government believes it's made drink driving an antisocial activity. Now it's trying to do the same for speeding and parking illegally. Tom Simons, BBC News, South London.
A Sunday newspaper is reporting that 7 members of William Hague's shadow cabinet team have admitted to using illegal drugs. The report in the Mail on Sunday follows a call by the Shadow Home Secretary Anne Widdecombe at last week's Tory party conference for fixed penalty fines for anyone found in possession of drugs. Conservative Central Office has refused tonight to comment. More football now, and England may have lost their match and Kevin Keegan, but it was a better day for our other national team. Scotland beat San Marino, while Wales and Northern Ireland both drew against Scandinavian opposition.
San Marino's record in internationals reads played 46, drawn 1, lost 45. But as England once found on a visit, it's not always straightforward. And in the first half, Scotland looked as if they might suffer just one of those nights. This was one of several near misses in the first half. 71 minutes had gone when the deadlock was finally broken. Matt Elliott nodding home his first goal for Scotland. Cue scenes of relief from the Tartan army. Another soon followed, Don Hutchison killing off San Marino to ensure Scotland's victory and 3 World Cup points. In Group 5, Wales faced Norway in Cardiff, with Nathan Blake's fine header giving them a second half lead.
A superb goal from Nathan Blake.
But with 10 minutes remaining, that lead was surrendered. Hellstad bundling in the scrappiest of equalisers before colliding with the post. David Healy, a Manchester United reserve, provided the run and shot which put Northern Ireland ahead against more Scandinavian opposition. Denmark, though, denied them victory, Rommedahl rolling the ball home despite appeals for offside. The points were shared. The Republic of Ireland are playing in Portugal, taking on a side which was such a force at Euro 2000. They kept Luis Figo and co at bay in the first half, Ireland's defence standing firm under relentless attacks. James Helm, BBC News.
And the main news again, Kevin Keegan has resigned as coach of the England football team after today's 1-0 defeat by Germany at Wembley. He said he's not up to the job. There'll be news throughout the night over on BBC News 24, but from me, a very good night.
Good evening. Was it wet enough for you? Nearly an inch of rain in Leeds, and I'm sorry, that rain actually did arrive a little bit earlier than we thought. And we're not alone. In Venice, just about a couple of inches of rain just recently, and in Greece, in Corfu, similarly, it's been very wet indeed. Now, back closer to home, it's that little area of low pressure that's worrying us at the moment. It is going to be slipping in towards the north of Scotland, and it's going to bring, for a time at least, some very strong winds to the northern western Isles and the Highlands. We also have the rain to contend with. It's not as heavy as it was earlier on, but there's still a fair amount of rain across the country and still 1 or 2 heavy bursts left, and that rain will continue to ease away eastwards during the rest of the night, but I think it's still likely to be affecting the extreme southeastern corner even into tomorrow morning, and as it moves away, so showers will come into the west, some pretty heavy blustery showers across Northern Ireland and into western Scotland. In some shelter, it'll be a fairly chilly night. Most places they're seeing temperatures holding up quite nicely. Any rain still in the southeastern corner will quite readily clear away tomorrow, and then I think it's going to be bright for a time in many central and eastern areas, but showers will develop, 1 or 2 quite heavy ones in the south. If anywhere is going to miss the worst of the showers, perhaps East Anglia, North East England, parts of eastern Scotland, whereas on the other hand, in Northern Ireland and western Scotland, those showers heavy and blustery, blown on by a pretty strong wind. The showers probably peaking and easing down in the latter part of the day, but with those strong winds and the showers, it will feel rather chilly. Good night.